Hello and welcome to another Let's Play. Me, GamerWolfSix, of Sileo, Tales of a New Dawn. Before we start, if you're interested in playing this game, you can get it free on itch.io. But if you want to support the people that make this game and or get the news version earlier, you can go to Patreon, where it's $5 a month, $54 a year. So, on the last Let's Play, we were inside Spencer's house, where there was this spookiness happening, and then Spencer appeared and he's like, okay, let me tell you the theory of everything. Also, you're asleep, also go through this portal, and I'll show you rather than tell you. Humans existed, there were robots, there were humans created robots to fight other nations, but then the other nation was like, we'll make genetically engineered people to do it, and then they found out, if we make genetically engineered animals, they'll fight better against the people owning the robots. But then, nuclear war happened, and the guy that designs the animal people who really didn't like, how things were going with, making animal people fighting slaves and mutants, soulless mutants, he was like, well, I'm gonna get this bunker, and gonna genetically engineer the next generation of life, which would be, anthros, and then there were mortal anthros who would, oversee everything, and then, the rest of society, and then they rebuilt everything after, the nuclear apocalypse faded away and greenery came back, but then war happened between the anthro people, and Spencer walk the earth, basically trying to live his life since, his kingdom was destroyed and all that. You go to the previous episode. I know it's an hour long, but there's a lot happening. But also it's a thing where it's like, was it really a dream? Or was it, all the truth? And, all these things are easier shown and influenced in dreamlike states. You have to see because he says, wake up. Set face. Then begin. Ugh. What the hell was that? A dream? No. Far too vivid to be a dream. Spencer. Apollo. He had said something about pheromones. Something about painting? I swayed to and fro as I climbed to my feet, supporting my weight against the trunk of the tree to avoid falling flat on my face. My head was racked with agony as it desperately clamored to make sense of what I just experienced, all the while overloaded with such a colossal infusion of new knowledge. Dazed and confused, I stood rooted in place as I recovered my sense of balance and my eyes regained their focus, eventually revealing Apollo's manor, and the very door through which I had entered once before. Oh, and also these immortal beings aren't 100% immortal because sometimes they just poof into dust. Because, eventually I guess you're not always immortal. Would I find it unlocked? A warm fire and hot cocoa waiting within? Would I learn that my bizarre dream had been little more than just that? Seeing no reason to delay, I clumsily stumbled forward, closing in on the manor's entrance with each wobbly step. It was too bizarre to make any sense of. As I pulled the door closed behind me, Apollo waited patiently in a chair, positioned by a lit fireplace, a kettle positioned on the table in front of him, steam rising from its spout. Noticing my arrival, he smiled and warmly before gesturing to the other chair opposite his. Worry not, these old chairs have endured far worse than a bit of rain. Accepting his invitation, I sheepishly sat in the lesser worn of the two chairs, no doubt the one primarily used by Apollo's infrequent visitors. Before long, the intense warmth of the raging fire evaporated the water in my fur and clothing, with more steam coming from me than the kettle. Apollo then motioned to the kettle, inviting me to warm myself inside as well as out. I obliged, pouring a hearty helping of piping hot cocoa into a mug before eagerly raising it to my lips. Between that and the cozy fire, I was beginning to feel very much at home. As soon as the flavor enveloped my taste buds, I recognized it as being the very same that Ty had prepared on our camping expedition. How are you enjoying coca? I trust that it hits the spot? Definitely. But, I think Ty stole your recipe. With permission, I assure you. I take it you're a fan then? I am. I loved it the first time I tasted it, and loved it just as much now. It warms my heart to hear you say so. Now, forgive me, but it would be best if we concluded our business promptly. Our time in our shared dream may have been limitless, but in reality, that is no longer the case. The longer we are together, the worse your symptoms will become. I take it you grasp that detail? Exposure to pheromones. Right. Is that why I've been acting so strangely? Is that why I've been acting like some kind of animal? We all are animals, Adrian. At least in part. Although, when compared to our human half, it's hard to say which is more civilized of the two times. Yeah, that can be right. The majority of people are not receptive to my pheromones, but a smaller portion of the populace is. Luck would just so have it that this sensitivity is one of what seems to be a great many things to you, and Ty share in common. But I was acting off, even before the first time we'd met. And then there was that nightmare I had, a nightmare where I saw you. Indeed, exposure to pheromones triggers reproduction of those same pheromones. A higher degree of exposure, the more potent and reproduced pheromones become. And, as it would happen, Todd and I have spent a great deal of time in each other's company. While the few brief encounters you and I had certainly did not help matters, the vast majority of your exposure came directly from Ty. I hope you do not hold this against him, in truth. I fear that I may have understated the likelihood of his exposure affecting somebody else. The fact that you are similarly sensitive to exposure, combined with the timing and overall pace of your relationship, it was truly a perfect storm. So unlikely, and yet so devastating for you both. How long have I been affected exactly? I don't recall exactly when all this started. It came on slowly, and before I knew it, I had already lost control. It is difficult to say, exactly. You can give me a timeline of what happened between you two, can't you? We met 2 days after I arrived in Woodcrest. Diego took me into town to hopefully find work. Ty's was the first place we visited, and he offered me casual work, and then. I think the next day I worked for him the first time, or was it the day after that? So much has happened. It's hard to remember exactly, but it was that day that I had paid him a visit, and found out that my interest was mutual. We spent a lot of time together the next day, and even more the day after the festival. I was there with him the entire day. Then, we went back to his house, and let's just say I stayed the night. I understand. Contact of that sort can rapidly accelerate the onset of symptoms. Once the earliest signs of exposure often manifests as a sharpening of senses in a once carnivorous species. Carnivorous? Such as a tiger or a husky. The interesting thing about Ty is how long it took for symptoms to show, and the awful part of that is how progressed his exposure had become by the time I knew what it was happening. He had a firm grasp on his behavior, and an ironclad constitution, but even that began to give way. He became somewhat unpredictable. He seemed to second-guess himself a lot, make decisions only to change his mind, or doubt himself to a considerable degree. And, in particular, he became acutely aware of scents and fragrances. More so than perhaps any Felid I have ever met. I remember that night, after the festival. His cologne really stood out to me, among other things. Do you think I was already showing symptoms that soon? I will not deny that is possible. Yes. And you mentioned a loss of control. This typically indicates a more advanced exposure, and in the absence of any commands sent by a commander, your brain will fall prey to its base instincts, your primal whims, your carnal urges. I am pleased that you recall my words. I do, and the first obvious time I noticed it was when Ty and I went camping. I lost control, acted in a way I never knew could. I see. But it's almost as if Ty encouraged it, almost like he knew and was edging me on. Not intentionally, of that much I can assure you. Ty is suffering from a significant degree of exposure himself, even now, and been supplying him with medicine to help combat symptoms. However, he came to rely too heavily on it. He developed something of a tolerance. By the time the two of you had met, he had already stopped taking it. He had been trying to go it alone, stubbornly trying to control his erratic behaviors through power of will alone. As you are intimately aware, this ultimately did not go well for him. But I'm sure you are wondering why I invited you here in such proximity, if such proximity can have a terrible impact upon your mind. With a smile, Apollo reached down beside the chair and retrieved a small container. Within were a series of small bottles, each containing a rose-colored liquid. He handed this container to me and peered closely at the bottles before returning Apollo's expectant gaze. What are these? Are they medicine he gave to Ty? Sort of. They are, in fact, a blend of Artemis's greatest concoctions, faithfully reproduced by yours truly. One part is the same and will ease your symptoms. The other part of the concoction will prevent your body from reproducing those pheromones, at least for a short while. That is, so long as you follow my directions. One day, you hear me? Not 3, like a certain disobedient wildcat was taking. 1 a day, he meant. Understood. Good. It's also crucial because the additional ingredient required to prevent reproduction of the pheromones is quite hard to come by. There is only one place on Earth I know this particular flower to bloom, in a forest many long miles to the south, nestled deep in the untouched wilderness. Wait, you went back? For me? For you, and for Ty. And for Artemis. For that is also the place where I laid him to rest. I could not face it for the longest time. I simply lacked the strength to go. In a way, I have you to thank for finally giving me the courage to visit that beautiful place again, to reflect on a past long lost. I'm sorry, Apollo. Please, do not be sorry. I'm the one who should be sorry for everything I have put you and Ty through. Now, perhaps it's a good time to take a swig? I promise you'll feel much better afterwards. Then, that sounds like a good plan. Thank you, Apollo. Believe me when I say it's the very least I can do. I was eager to put my madness behind me. From the container, I revealed a vial of a pink-hued liquid, and removed the cap. I stared at the bottle with some mild hesitation for a few seconds, considering the possibilities. In truth, this mixture could have been anything, but I felt no reason not to trust Apollo. In fact, for some reason, I felt as though I could trust him implicitly. And so, I held the bottle to my lips and took a gulp. Doesn't burn quite like firewater, but it is not a taste you will soon forget, I am sure. How do you feel? It works quickly, does it not? I was almost through. It was almost as though some kind of haze had cleared from my mind. For the first time, in what had certainly been a good long time, I felt fully in control. I felt like myself again. I had almost forgotten what normal felt like. I am exceptionally glad that it worked. It has been a very, very long time since I brewed that particular medicine. I feared the flower may have lost potency, or perhaps I had made some kind of blunder. but I am truly pleased to hear that is not the case. It almost seems as though the flower's effect has only improved. Almost as though my old friend still tends that garden, like he did all those years past. And I apologize for not getting this to you sooner. Ty had raised an alarm a few days ago, but the likelihood of second-hand exposure was so minute. I'm sorry. I should have responded more quickly. Keeping your company in the bar the other day, I'd hoped to assess you for symptoms. I figured that if you were indeed exposed like Ty had come to suspect, sufficient time in my presence would provoke some kind of reaction. At the time, I noticed nothing that was obvious, but I know now that the reaction in question came later on that day. I cannot begin to apologize for what I've put you through. Please, don't be sorry. It's not your fault. Is it not? Exposure to an immortal is difficult to replicate without an immortal. My best intentions matter not. My presence has negatively impacted the lives of both yourself and Ty, and I regret it greatly. Once I heard what had transpired, I immediately set off. I only arrived back this morning with medicine in hand. Suffice to say, it's been a long couple of days. Is that why you were asleep when I arrived? Indeed, I left a very specific breadcrumb to alert what can I only assume is a friend of yours to something they had missed. It was a dangerous move, perhaps, but one I felt confident enough to make, and I felt necessary given recent developments. I had not necessarily expected you to arrive so quickly, but it was also no accident that I was sleeping on your arrival. After all, I wanted to be sure you were indeed exposed, and the most reliable way to do so was to be asleep when you came. Though I think that I have to assume that the main character would be asleep as well. It is as I told you at the time. While we immortals have long lost the ability to control our pheromones, as our predecessors once did, the reins for those abilities are mostly returned in slumber. I planned to wake myself from that slumber once I had confirmed your exposure. But before I could, you blindly waltzed right into my dream, as if you owned the place. An unexpected twist for certain, but one that would wind up serving both of us very well indeed. After all, it is a very long story, and the less time we could spend together in person, the better. But of course, I understand that we have not yet covered everything. Yeah, I want to know what happened between you and Ty. Bits and pieces have been implied, but I want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. And I would not dream of leaving such a question unanswered, my dear friend. One day, about a year ago, I chanced to visit to a recently opened bar in town. Naturally, it had been open for some time, but on a scale of thousands of years, virtually everything seems new. I planned to scope out the place out, enjoy a drink or two before heading on my merry way. Alas, a certain barman took an interest in little old me, and the interest just so happened to be mutual. One such reason being some key similarities to Artemis. They are far from the same, but a few specific mannerisms. It is strange how such simple things can have such a profound impact. I knew being somewhere so public in such proximity with another was risky, so I exercised restraint in the beginning, kept my distance from other patrons, and watching Ty closely for any changes in his behavior. After considerable time, and no obvious indication of exposure, I relaxed somewhat. Ty had taken interest in me, and despite some hesitation on my part, the very same hesitation I would have towards a relationship with any mortal, I eventually relented. It was a terrible mistake, and not a day goes by where I live without that regret. I knew no good could come of it. I knew, in time, it could only end in pain. But it had been so long. It had been so... I had been alone for so long. A momentary weakness was all it took. Despite this, he and I got along very well, and despite a rather extreme age difference, we shared a lot in common. But then, I began to notice changes in his behavior, and I began to see him in my dreams. Wait, how come I never saw Ty in my dreams? I mean, I did, but not the real Ty. Even though you're both exposed and both subsequently produced pheromones, only a slumbering immortal can exercise any control over those dreams. You are both exposed, but never connected in a way you and I connected today. I see. By this point, he already knew the truth about me, and he knew full well what was happening to him. He responded by proposing to me. He presented me a beautiful ring, an heirloom that meant the world to him. And, to this day, it breaks my heart that I had to say no. It tears me asunder every time I remember the pain on his face when I told him that we would have to stop seeing each other. His heartbroken expression. It is burned into my mind, another of my many, many regrets. I plied him with medicine and did all I could to keep safe distance. Maintaining that distance was the only way he would recover. It turned out he was significantly exposed, but merely resilient to the symptoms. It was, as I said, he was strong, but not strong enough to hold out forever. He began to rely on the medicine too much, until such a time that he abandoned the medicine entirely, choosing instead to go it alone and rely on his own strength to make it through. This might have been okay. That is, if you would have not have come along so soon after the fact. The worst case scenario, if there ever was one. But that aside, also the best case scenario. I can see that Ty loves you a great deal. And, even though he has yet to finish mourning what we had together, having such a wonderful opportunity to move on with somebody such as yourself is truly the best possible thing for him. Allow me to be blunt for a moment. I still love Ty with all my heart. That much is completely true. But I also love Artemis, similarly with all my heart. As much as we, sentient beings, strive to create arbitrary rules that we can and cannot be, for what we can and cannot be, love is simply non-exclusive. A person can love several people, many people in fact, platonically or otherwise. And love is similarly not finite. You do not share love. There's endless love for all, no matter how far and wide that love may be spread. The world would be a far better place if we did not treat love with such exclusivity and conform it to an artificial and arbitrary bounds. But I'm certain you've heard more than enough of my preaching for one day. My point merely being that Ty may, well, still love me. That is only to be expected. But it doesn't mean that you are sharing that love. He can still give you all of his heart. I understand. I just wish Ty would have said something. Lucas would have said something. Maybe we could have avoided all this mess. I mean, I feel like yes, did I predict this? Maybe in a thing like, I don't know, gods or aliens or something like that. But genetically engineered guys that live forever. Didn't really think that, but Ty could have said, yes, I was in a relationship with this guy, and he still means a lot to me, but there are reasons it can't work out. And if he was like, well, what are the reasons? It could have been like, I don't know, medical reasons? Because, it is the truth and stuff. Like, I guess you might be like, well, then what's the medical reason? But again, it's like, you know, be like, hey, I do love this person. We just can't be together. And I know that. It's mutually like, we still love each other, but, we're no longer a thing. Like, I know some people wouldn't be able to understand that. Actually, I might just, be curious to send a message to a friend, be like, hey, person who is very, has expertise in relationships and stuff like that. What would you feel about this kind of thing going on? Anyways. You recall we discussed Doomsday Clock Disorder the other day, yes? Okay, that's nothing I'm curious about. Yeah. While the Immortals have largely been forgotten by time, becoming little more than legends or myths, there are still those who know of our existence. This group is known as the UMC, short for United Medical Council. They are a former Ortegan government agency turned research group whose number one goal is to prevent their species' extinction at all costs, and they believe that solution lies within immortal DNA. Thus, they hunt us and will stop at nothing to capture and turn us into lab rats. Ah, I guess that's the life and death thing. Yeah, the Ortegan government doesn't seem all that great. Why do they think your DNA is the solution? Because Doomsday Clock Disorder does not kill its subject. DCD therefore cannot render a species extinct. Where that species spared a natural death, they seek to alter the DNA of the yet unborn Ortegan infants and make them like us. Wait, is that even possible? I mean, I'm sure Marsden could have done it, but I didn't think we had quite figured out that stuff out yet. You are right. We have not. I have strong doubts that they would be able to do it, at least any time in the foreseeable future. Alas, the UMC is inclined to disagree, and really, who am I to doubt them? After all, they have already had a first-hand look at immortal DNA. What? How? The reason we even know of their existence, the reason those of us who remain do so in the shadows, is because they captured one of us, 11, nicknamed Athena, upon Artemis inheritance. Upon Artemis inheritance? Insistence. Ah, her capture was when we first learned of their existence. Oh no, what happened to her? At some point, she became more useful to them as a cadaver. It is ironic that she began her life in a lab as an inhumane science experiment, and would lose her life in the exact same scenario. 6,000 long years gone, just like that. It seemed like some sort of cruel joke. Whether they can truly replicate immortality in Ortegan remains can be seen, but is hardly relevant. Remains to be seen, but is hardly relevant. What is the consideration that each single immortal currently alive is a ticking time bomb. We are long-lived, certainly, but deeply flawed and riddled with problems. The pheromone situation is just one of the great many contributions to the miserable existence of an immortal endures. I am no exception, and Ty knew that all too well. Apollo quickly moved the topic forward, almost like he had not wanted me to inquire further. I was curious about just what these things were, but perhaps it would be better to ask Ty when I got the chance. Their approach might prevent DCD from dealing its final blow, but it is no cure. And if the resultant immortal Ortegans are even half as broken as flawed as they turned out to be, it would argue that extinction would be a strange sort of mercy. And God forbid that they inherit something akin to our pheromones. There were only 12 of us, and yet still give us no end of grief. Can you imagine what it'd be like if an entire small species became a source? It would be a treacherous world to live in for people such as yourself and Ty. Long story short, to them, no cost is too steep if it were to save their species. But this cost most certainly is. While the resultant data Marsden obtained from the experiments that gave rise to myself and my kin allowed him to survive longer than he otherwise would have, by every other metric, the experiment was a total failure. Adapting our DNA for any such purpose would be opening up a massive can of worms. There's nothing worth saving. The only place our genetic code belongs is in the distinct past, completely lost to time. But alas, I digress. My purpose in telling you all this is so that you understand why Ty would say nothing to you. It's not to say that this decision was the right one given how things turned out, but he exercised great caution to help ensure my safety. If he hadn't trusted you and said anything, and you had trusted a friend and told them, that information might eventually wind up in the wrong hands. That information may have been all that was needed to result in my capture. Ty was terrified of that possibility. He only wanted to keep me safe. Yeah, especially since, multiple times people hey, main character, don't tell anybody else. Next scene, hey, I just heard this thing. But cases of exposure are something that the UMC knows to watch for. Their unique blend of symptoms is unmistakable and indicate that an immortal source cannot be far away. They're incredibly hard to keep tabs on. I might not realize they are on my tail until I've already been caught. This is why my immortality must be kept under wraps, and this is why Ty refused to take any chances. Please do not blame him. I know that things did not go the way he had hoped, but he only sought to keep me safe. Oh, and heck, I'm just looking at time, because I'm timing something. Okay, we got time. I want to keep that secret as well. I know there are others that assist you and find me, but telling them is not worth the risk. So, right, please keep safe, and I also ask you to keep what you learned secret as well today. And before you ask, Lucas was an accident. We had not intended for him to find out, but just like you, he grew suspicious and began digging. Soon, he was right on top of me. I had no choice but to extend an invitation. He sat in that very chair, in front of this very fire. Thankfully, he became as dedicated as Ty when it came to keeping my secret under wraps. And in time, we even became good friends, even after Ty and I had separated. This remained true, but every person knows is a risk. I understood Apollo's reasons. Sorry, I'm trying to read. I guess all this reading, even if I take 12-hour break, sleep, wake up the next day, it's still a bit, hard. Reasons for requesting this. Though I had no idea how I was supposed to convince Diego and Dom to simply forget about it. I put this on the back of my mind to worry about it another time. Instead, I began to focus on an omnipresent sense of guilt, which had welled up from within me. Your secret is safe with me, Apollo, but I feel so bad for how I treated Ty. For what it's worth, your exposure seems to have a significant impact on your behavior. You must not be so hard on yourself. Exposure be damned. I love him. And it isn't okay that you treat him the way I did, with such distrust and hostility. I should have trusted him. I would do anything to make it up for him, to turn back the clock. Anything? Apollo peered at me inquisitively, waiting patiently for my response. Though his rather specific response gave me pause, I stuck to my guns. Yeah, anything. Then perhaps we can hit two birds with one stone, so to speak. If you'll excuse the pun, at my own expense. What do you have in mind? I'd like you to be the messenger of sorts. I'm sure you've not forgotten tomorrow is Ty's birthday, yes? What? Oh, that's right. I have a gift for him and everything. Terrific. Now you see, before things went, well, the way they had been, I had attempted to procure a rather special gift for tomorrow. Oh? He used to harp on about this old whiskey his grandmother used to drink, about how she would give him a little to help him sleep as a young child. I know how badly he wanted one last taste. I love that sentimentality of his. Well, it would just so happen that I managed to track down a bottle not so long ago, and, if you are willing, I would ask that you collect it for me and deliver it to him, along with your own gift. Huh? But why? Because there's little in the world that Ty wants more, except for maybe an opportunity to make things right with you, and I wish to deliver them both, these things together. It will serve as a statement of finality, and almost a final farewell, and it will infer my blessing. And, knowing what you know now, I take it that you appreciate the opportunity to give him these gifts in person. And there's also a matter of the efforts required to procure it on such short notice. Efforts you'll be able to take full credit for, of course. What? I thought you had already... Not exactly. I have secured a bottle, but I have yet collected it from the store. Oh, easy. So we just have to swing down to the liquor store? Indeed, although there's one small catch. The store in question is in Summersvale, and if I'm not mistaken, the final train of the day will be departing rather soon. The bottle is all paid for. Worry not. Oh, I would love to see the look on his face, as one gift delivers another. He will be so pleased to see you. But how do you know this? When I spoke to him today, he seemed fairly accepting that it was over between us. He had told you has he told you otherwise? Not exactly, but I know him far too well, not to know that he was hurting. I know deep within my heart that pain will bear fruit. A plan will bear fruit. I can read. I simply ask that you trust me on this. Okay, I trust you, Apollo. Where do I have to go? Apollo smiled brightly as he reached into his jacket, revealing an object from a pocket sewn on the inside. He then extended his hand and placed a small piece of paper in my palm. It was a receipt, along with it belonging to a liquor store in Summersvale. Indeed, the invoice was paid, and thank goodness for that, as the price made my eyes water. Jeez, a gift isn't even worth a tenth of the cost. Ah, but you are the main gift, are you not, my dear friend? If I'm not mistaken, he'll be happier to see you than he will be to see this old bottle of whiskey. And now, there are no longer any secrets between you. The perfect circumstances for a fresh start, yes? And the fact that you will turn up, having done the legwork to secure this gift, there will be no better way to communicate my blessing. And of course, what I want most is for him to find that happiness. I could not give it to him, and for you to share in that happiness. Everybody wins, right? I sure hope you're right about this, Apollo, but I trust you. Marvelous. Now, I must apologize once again for keeping things so brief. Last thing I wish to do is extravate your symptoms, exact something, with my presence. But before we part ways, is there anything you wish that you struggle to comprehend? Anything that I've failed to explain in adequate detail? Yeah, there's one thing I don't quite understand. Ty has been exposed, so that means he's reproducing pheromones, right? Wouldn't that mean that I'm doing the same? That is correct, yes. But then, what happens if Ty and I stay locked in a room together or something? Wouldn't we both keep exposing one another back and forth in some kind of perpetual cycle? Not quite. Understand that the rate at which pheromones are reproduced is in direct correlation to the severity of their exposure. Much like how a minor laceration would slowly mend itself. A person slowly but surely recovers from their exposure as time passes by. Imagine that group of individuals, all with varying degrees of exposure, are sealed together in a small room. Each member of that group would witness an increase in the severity of their own exposure until the entire group had achieved a parity with its most severe exposed member. From that point onward, the group as a whole would gradually begin to recover. Of course, the slowest recovering individual would have always the greatest degree of exposure. Therefore, the group will remain parity with the slowest recovering member. And so I'm just going to also look at this and refresh it. Okay. This course means that recovering as part of the group is almost always considerably slower, and simply recovering alone, and then simply recovering alone. Contact with another exposed individual is near universally detrimental and should be avoided where possible. When a person recovers from their exposure, do they stop reproducing pheromones? Precisely right. It is exposure that prompts reproduction to begin. Conversely, the absence of exposure will see that reproduction process grind to a complete halt. Do you think that my presence might have slowed Ty's recovery? I do not. No. Lesser exposed individuals are always those who suffer the consequences. In this particular scenario, those consequences are yours to bear, and yours alone. I see. But I thought that you and Ty had already been apart for some time. How long does it usually take for someone to recover? The answer to that question varies greatly from person to person, as well as depending on the severity of that specific exposure. Minor exposures can typically recover within a matter of hours, while moderate cases can take several days. While what constitutes a severe case varies greatly. A typical severe case will gradually recover in a week or two, but for less typical and more extreme examples, weeks can quickly turn into months. You and Ty, hasn't it been about a month since the two of you went your separate ways? Correct. And to call Ty's case severe would be something of an understatement. Through a combination of his own unique reaction to the pheromone exposure and a stubborn concealment of the resultant symptoms, his case had progressed far beyond severe, well before I had noticed it myself. And the fact that even now he continues to experience such debilitating symptoms only goes to show how bad he has allowed things to become, and the severity of this case is precisely why he too developed a similarly severe exposure born near exclusively from contact with a peer. I see. It's kind of amazing this isn't something that's more widely known about. Why would it be? Remember, only a small fraction of the population is even receptive to the pheromones. If I recall correctly, it was something like 1 in every 50 or so people. In fact, that two such people wound up in a relationship with an immortal in such proximity is, well, improbable. I can type these words, but it's like when I read them sometimes, I don't know. For one, and deeply unfortunate for the other. But if you think such individuals are difficult to come by, just wait until you see how many immortals remain. Do you know how many there is? For all I know, I may be the last. It has been quite some time since Dionysus and I were last in contact. Anything could have happened since then. The majority of my remaining kin are confirmed deceased, although the fate of a small few remains unknown. I suppose it is always possible that they, like I, yet live on, keeping a low profile as possible to ensure their own safety. But that is a tale for another time. Our time here is precious after all. To conclude my previous explanation, without our mortal source of pheromones, any cases of exposure in the wild rapidly become extinct in only as long as it takes for those affected to recover. Days usually. The symptoms and characteristics are distinctive, and where cases of exposure may be found, the immortal response for them cannot be far away. And it is like I told you before, it will stop at nothing to capture us. Nothing. It's weird that this group hunting immortals from a nation of dwindling people is so powerful, you know? It was a terrifying prospect. Of that, I had no doubt. Immortality, it sure wasn't all that it cracked up to be. You know, it still doesn't make a lot of sense how these pheromones work exactly. Yeah, let's talk even more. How is it that they can achieve such complex tasks? I didn't know a lot about this stuff was even possible. A wise question indeed, my friend. It's important to remember that when we typically refer to pheromones, we refer to those that are naturally occurring. And indeed, you're right. Naturally occurring pheromones cannot possibly facilitate such feats. However, the pheromones in question are man-made in origin, and were purposely built to support such functionality. Not only that, but our receptors were modified in such a way to ensure compatibility with these pheromones. It is purely artificial adaptation, and one exclusive to our greater species. I'll refrain from boring you with the intricate workings of such a system, but know that they are far more than merely typical pheromones. While they certainly have a great deal in common, these pheromones might as well be something different entirely. Now then, is there anything else you do not understand? I trust that I have answered your question satisfactorily? It does. Thanks, Apollo. It is my pleasure. Now, if there's nothing else, perhaps it is an opportune time to embark on an evening trip. To a sun-soaked Summersvale. If it makes things right, and makes Ty happy, it sounds like the best thing in the world. Sorry, that was me being like, hey, this thing is going to expire soon. Just making sure that's well said. Now, get out of here, and away from me before you wind up even more ill. You have a train to catch. With a confident and eager grin, I rose to my feet, ready to begin my journey across Woodcrest to the very same train at which I had already arrived only 2 weeks prior. Thanks, Apollo, for everything. I owe you one. The way I see it, it is I who owes you quite the debt. Cleaning up my own mess is hardly deserving of thanks. I will permit you to call it even, should you insist. The two of us shared a mutual and understanding smile before I turned away, making my way towards the exit of Apollo's hidden manor, and commencing my long journey across town. Whew. Yep, another almost hour-long episode. But that's going to be the end of this Let's Play. So, please comment, because I like comments, tell me what you like, dislike, tips, tricks, otherwise. If you like my YouTube and like to see it grow, then please like, subscribe, and share the rest of it grow. Please your animals help control the pet population. And if you want to play this game, it's available for free on itch.io. But if you want to support the people that make this game and or get the newest version earlier, you can go to Patreon, which is $5 a month, $54 a year. And until next time, another Let's Play by me, GamerWolfSix of Sileo, Tales of New Dawn. So thanks and see ya.